So, when C2E2 started, there had been, like, IDW said on the first day that on Sunday, last day of the convention, we've got big news and we're sharing a booth with Oni Press, so make sure you come here. So I waited, and I waited, and I waited, hoping this news would pay off. And you know what? It did pay off. It really did, because we got the announcement of Rick and Morty crossing over with, of all things, Dungeons and Dragons. Let me say that again. There is going to be a crossover between Rick and Morty with Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. That sounds totally outlandish, but we live in a world where Archie meets the Punisher exists, so I guess anything goes. Rick and Morty crossing over with Dungeons and Dragons is by far, it's insane, but at the same time you kind of expect it from this kind of universe. The comic will be coming out in August. It will be a 4-part crossover, as opposed to, you know, how we regularly see, like, a 6-part comic or anything like that. In here, it will be a 4-part comic where Rick and the rest of his family are brought into the world of Dungeons and Dragons and have to find their way out. Knowing Rick, he'd probably either, like, portal gun them there, or he created the world. Because if he can create Fruity Land, he can create the world of Dungeons and Dragons. All because Morty wanted to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons. So, there's just, I know it sounds, again, this sounds completely goddamn ridiculous. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's so much you can do with Rick and Morty in the Dungeons and Dragons universe. There's just so much potential for hilarity and sick comedy that Rick and Morty is known for in that universe. It's just a giant sandbox for Rick and Morty to play it, you know, for Rick to, you know, play it. And it's magic-centric, and Rick is more all about science. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really hoping that the rest, you know, aside from Rick, like Morty, Summer, Jerry, and Beth are like, they're all different, like, classes, like, maybe Summer's a rogue, or Jerry's a paladin. No, he wouldn't be a paladin, he'd be a goblin. That's how I'd have it if I could write this comic. Beth would probably be a paladin. So, yeah. There's so much you can do. There's so much just hilarity. You know, like, the possibilities are endless of having Rick and Morty in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Like, I'm really hoping we get, like, references to, like, the 80s cartoon. You guys remember the 80s cartoon where, you know, they had Venger? You know, I really want, like, Rick to, like, punch him in the dick or something. Or have Rick just, like, one-hit KO Tiamat from, again, that, like, 5-headed dragon that usually shows up in a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and again in the 80s cartoon. So have him, like, Tiamat's, like, wrecking shit, and Rick's just, like, you know, killed it, dead. I want to get out of here now, guys. So, this is just, like, it just sounds to me like just all around insanity and just awesome. We actually, like, as of this recording, because it's not posted yet, on my other channel, Comic Universe, which you guys can check out in the link below. You guys can subscribe there if you haven't already. Where my friend Dubs and I actually cover this. We cover this in this whole big potluck of news of all the stuff that's come out over the week, and we talk about it. And yeah, I get to completely freak out about it on a whole other extension. That's where I'm kind of like all my energy went on it, if I'm being honest with you guys. All my energy kind of like got spent geeking out over this crossover, because we talked about it right after it got announced, so all my energy was there. So, and all my like further thoughts are there. But we also talked about like the Sam Fisher showing up in Ghost Recon Wildlands. We talked about the Red Sonja movie. We talked about a lot of stuff. So that will be posted later tonight as of this recording. And yeah, I'm you know, as always, you know, if you haven't already, subscribe to it below. But let's get back to the object at hand. That being is that, I'm wondering what kind of hilarity and shenanigans we could get into. I mean, again, we could play with a lot of the roles and classes in the game. I'm really hoping, like, you know how, like, they have, like, lawful good, lawful evil, that kind of map? I'm hoping, like, there's a cover of that, or, like, a moment in there where Summer or Morty's explaining, like, lawful good, lawful evil, or trying to figure out who's who, and Rick would be like, oh, it's all bullshit, cut it out! So, something like that, something, like, to that degree would just be hilarious, because Rick would just because it's typical Rick, really. It's just typical Rick fashion for him to look at something and go, this is completely stupid, and I'm going to do my hardest to ruin this for everybody. So, I'm really excited, and maybe, down the road, maybe we could get, like, some other cool crossovers, because I wasn't expecting them to, Rick and, Cartoon Network and Adult Swim to be like, yeah, you can't cross, you can do comics, but you can't cross over with anybody. So, I was actually pleasantly surprised that this is the one, and Dungeons and Dragons of all things. Because the last time I saw that was like a crossover with, it was like that infestation event where it had like the elder gods from, well, not the elder, like the great old ones from H.P. Lovecraft show up in there, or something like that. But yeah. So I'm really surprised, because I was thinking that would be part of the terms for the comic book contract, is that they could, Oni Press could do the comics, but they couldn't cross over with anything. That much like how with IDW, incidentally, is that IDW, when they had the comic book rights to Godzilla, Toho forbid them from doing any crossovers there, which really sucked. But you can't really stop Toho. Anyway. So maybe this will lead down the road for other, Rick and Morty crossovers. Like, I also am hoping that maybe we get an Invader Zim crossover, assuming, of course, Nickelodeon didn't put that in the contract for Oni Press to be like, you can't cross over with anything. And I can only imagine that they would be, as much as I want this to happen, because Oni Press has both titles, I really want a Rick and Morty Invader Zim crossover. But I sincerely doubt that's going to happen, because Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon are in no way going to play nice together. Much like how it took forever to get Paramount and BBC to work together for the Star Trek TNG Doctor Who crossover. So, I'm surprised this happened, in and of itself, so maybe we'll get some more Rick and Morty crossovers in the future, so hopefully that happens. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think of Dungeons & Dragons crossing over with Rick and Morty? Are you guys excited, or are you guys not? And what do you want to see Rick and Morty, like, do in the Dungeons & Dragons universe? Who do you want to see them face, or Rick do in there? Anyway, just comment below, let me know, and once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.